On April 12th, 1961, humanity reached space in the spaceship Vostok 1. And the first person to do it was a Russian cosmonaut named Yuri Gagarin. It was reported through communist Russian media that cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin entered space and said the following statement: "I see no God up here." The communist Russian media, they reported it saying that when Yuri got to space, he looked around and reported back to headquarters, "I see no God up here." And there are two problems with this statement. First, do we expect to find God in space? Christian apologist and great writer C.S. Lewis wrote in response to this statement saying, "Looking for God or heaven by exploring space is like reading or seeing all Shakespeare's plays in the hope you will find Shakespeare as one of the characters, or Stratford as one of the places. Shakespeare is in one sense present at every moment in every play, but he is never present in the same way as Falstaff or Lady Macbeth, nor is he diffused through the play like gas. If there were an uninformed person who thought plays exist on their own without an author, our belief in Shakespeare would not be much affected by his saying, quite truly, that he had studied all the plays and never found Shakespeare in them. To some, God is discoverable everywhere, to others, nowhere. Those who do not find him on earth are unlikely to find him in space, but send up a saint in a spacecraft, and he'll find God in space as he found God on earth. Much depends on the seeing eye." What a beautiful statement by C.S. Lewis. Something that we should also recognize and think about ourselves. We won't find God in space, just like we can't find the author of a story by reading the story. But by reading and exploring a story, we do find the author in a different way. God is discoverable everywhere in his creation because everything is his creation. In our creed, the Nicene Creed, our statement of belief, we say, we believe in one true God, the Father Almighty, the maker of heaven and earth, of all things, what? Visible and invisible. Can the maker of the visible and invisible be seen so easy? If it is invisible, can we see it? No. It is something that is hidden from us. So how can we assume that we who can only see the visible can see and understand a God who is both created, who has created both visible and invisible? But what is it that we need to see him? Because the saints see him. As C.S. Lewis says, that those who do not find him on earth are unlikely to find him in space, but send up what? Send up a saint in a spaceship, and he'll find God in space as he found God on earth. Today's gospel passage gives us that important ingredient for us to be able to see God in his creation. The passage reminds us the key characteristic that we need to see God. In today's gospel, Matthew chapter 18, the disciples asked Jesus, "Who is the greatest of the kingdom of heaven?" Why do they ask such a question? Why do they ask a question of who is the greatest? Because in our world, in our hearts, we are often considering and thinking about ourselves and comparing ourselves to others in order to see who is the best. And so the disciples in their hearts, they are asking, who is the greatest of the kingdom of heaven? And they come to Christ and say, who is the greatest? And Jesus says, "Assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me." So what is that key characteristic of being able to see God? Simple, right? Humility. Humility is the ability to see more than yourself. And that's a problem for us. Too often we are, as I spoke last week about vainglory, too often we are considering and looking only for our own interests, only for our own well-being, but we don't really think of ourselves. When we see others, we should not be consumed by jealousy, by lust, or by loathing. We should see the world as an innocent child. Humility is to look on the world as an innocent child, and he sees the world and searches through the world for what? What does a child look for most? For his parents. That's the one thing that he looks for the most. He looks for his father and his mother. And so if we go and look as a child does at the world, and we seek our Father, when we seek our Father, but not only seek our Father, when we seek our Father, and at the same time, when we see the world in such an awe, when a child sees the world for the first time, when he sees what's going on and learns the things that happen, it sees it with such humility. And we need ourselves to look every day with those eyes of humility. And when we look at with those eyes of humility, we come to the second thing that is wrong with the statement made by the cosmonaut who entered space. We see the second thing that is wrong with the statement, "I see no God up here." Do you know what's wrong with this statement, other than the fact that we're not going to see God in space if we don't see Him on earth? The second thing that is wrong is that the Russian cosmonaut who went to space, Yuri Gagarin, was also an Orthodox Christian. So the first man in space was an Orthodox Christian, and he did not say, "I see no God up here." That was all part of communist propaganda. Because later, as he was being interviewed, he did say, "An astronaut cannot be suspended in space and not have God in his mind and in his heart." Let me say that again. An astronaut cannot be suspended in space and not have God in his mind and in his heart. To behold the creation of earth and all of its universe is to see God not in the way that they who were the communists were expecting to see, "I see no God up here," when they would make that statement, but to see the creation and to be in awe of what has been made is to be awe of the Creator. When we see a good play, when we see a good book, when we read the writings of Shakespeare and are in awe, in its essence, we see the work of Shakespeare. And so when we look upon the creation and look in awe and look, we will see its Creator in the beauty that is there. So my brothers and sisters, if you have God in your mind and God in your heart with humility, as Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 8, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." My brothers and sisters, if you have God in your mind and in your heart with humility, as Christ says, you will see God. So let us have God in our mind and in our heart with humility in our eyes. And then we will see God in creation, and then we will see and behold the beauty that is Him. All glory and honor to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.